island of Guam is shaped like a sock with the toe pointing down. American forces have now pushed in 2 sizable sectors and are making further progress inland. The northern sector runs along the back of the ankle of the sock, from Adan Point to Adelup Point. Copperas Island, a splinter of land by the heel, is entirely in our hands, as are the roads along the beach from Aganya to Pitti Town. The other sector is at the sock's instep. Here our troops have captured and hold Mount Alifan. Admiral Nimitz says that progress is satisfactory.
Now, there's no indication yet of where the British line is now that Batu Pahat has been lost, but on the west, at least, the front is less than 60 miles from Singapore. In Burma, according to a Rangoon communique, there's no change in the situation. And it isn't quite clear from that whether General Headquarters at Rangoon means that British troops still are withdrawing toward Mulmine, or whether they've braced their lines.
Military and essential business travel is now at a new all-time high. Troop movements, furlough and casualty travel, and war production activity must still have first call on our nation's transportation systems. So please don't travel unless it is absolutely necessary. Pleasure travel must wait for victory.
front is showing signs of breaking in the movement today, which may quickly sweep the Russians into Warsaw and East Prussia. A German military commentator has admitted that Russian attacks against the Hungarians were only partly repelled as the Soviets renewed their pressure towards Slovakia and Hungary. And east and north of Warsaw, a Russian tank attack forced the German retreat of several miles. The Germans also admitted fresh Russian gains northwest of Bialystok.
Well, saving gasoline means saving money. Remember, as you drive your car or heat your home, oil is ammunition. Use it wisely.
Only light fighter opposition and weak and inaccurate anti-aircraft fire was encountered over Anshan. Planes in other operations reported fighter opposition, but said it generally was dispirited, and the Superforce either drove it away or ran away from it easily. 2 enemy planes probably were shot down, and 5 were damaged.
Your money invested in war bonds now helps to ensure a healthy, prosperous America, the kind we all want for our families. Money invested today in war bonds and kept there helps safeguard your own post-war financial security. So invest in the safest thing in the world. Buy more war bonds than before.
Admiral Nimitz announces heavy blows by American Pacific Fleet cruisers and destroyers and carrier-based planes against the Palaus, the Japanese islands guarding the Philippines on the east. The big guns of the Navy were directed against the Palaus on Wednesday. It was a follow-up attack to the blow delivered the day before by swarms of carrier fighter planes and 90-ton bomb assaults by Southwest Pacific land-based bombers. Carrier planes also took part in the Wednesday strike, while naval shells were wrecking or damaging buildings and defense installations and starting major fires on Anguar, the southernmost of the group.
If the farmers of America are to meet the huge production goals for this year, they must have part-time help from millions of people who haven't previously done farming. All types of laborers are wanted, men and women, boys and girls, no matter where you live. Prevailing wages will be paid. Whether it's for a few days or a few weeks, be part of the U.S. Crop Corps. America needs your help.
The United Nations Monetary Conference completed its work last night, approving an $8 billion fund to stabilize world currencies and a $9 billion bank for international reconstruction and development. The International Bank Agreement will be signed today, and then both plans must be approved by the various legislatures before they can take effect. About an hour ago on this network, William A.M. Burton, an Assistant Secretary of Commerce, announced that the Civil Aeronautics Administration has a $1 billion plan for building 3,000 new airports in the United States, almost doubling the number now in use. The program will be submitted to Congress soon. And the Navy has announced that it plans to boost its manpower strength by 383,000 men above the present authorized total of 3,006,000.
misery loves company, but wouldn't misery prefer relief? Now, the usual miseries of a common cold can be relieved fast with Grove's cold tablets. It's a multiple medicine, compounded like a doctor's prescription. Here's no more one-purpose tablets, but a combination of 8 active medicinal ingredients that'll take right hold and work internally to help all these usual cold miseries at once. Reduce fever, relieve headache, alleviate body aches and pains, reduce nasal stuffiness. No wonder millions of cold sufferers have turned to Grove's for cold misery relief for 51 years. Of course, rest and avoid exposure. Insist on the genuine Grove's cold tablets, take exactly as directed. Known to millions for over half a century as famous bromoquinine cold tablets.
Fortress formation, recently returning from a bombing mission over France, was attacked by a swarm of Volker-Wolfs. One fort, an engine knocked out, lurched out of control, leveled off, and began to fall behind. Immediately, 8 enemy planes roared in for the kill. High above, a Thunderbolt pilot saw the action. Over the radio, flashed the command, "Follow me, I'm going to help that fort below." 4 American fighter planes peeled off into screaming dives, scattered and drove them away from their intended victim. The fort was badly hurt. To halt its rapid loss of altitude, every movable object was ruthlessly thrown overboard, even guns and ammunition. During the long journey back, the 4 fighter planes covered their crippled mate like a protective umbrella. Then, as they finally approached the coast of England, radio again came into action, this time with a message to an emergency field clearing a runway for a crash landing. A landing that brought a priceless crew of American boys into safety.
can cost lives. Words can sink ships, lose weapons, mean the failure of military ventures. Remember these rules in even the most carefully guarded conversation. If you hear it from someone else, don't pass it on. If you see it yourself, tell no one. Don't talk unless you read it in the newspapers or hear it on the air. These are things our enemies would like to know about our men, planes, ships, and supplies. Where, how, when, how many, what kind. Let's make them find out the hard way on the battlefields of the world.
First major phase for the Battle of Guam is completed with the capture of Oroti Peninsula. During the mop-up on the peninsula, our 10-mile front remained virtually unchanged. But patrol activity gave indication of further inland progress, with Oroti and Opera harbors are now solidly held springboard. Marines on Tinian pushed the enemy into the southern end of the island with strong advances, backed by 7th Air Force Thunderbolt fighter.